You alright, guys? It's Wednesday, it's 12 o'clock, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. And, maybe you've heard of Mitochlorians if you've watched Star Wars, or the Flying Spaghetti Monster if you've spent enough time on the internet. But have you ever heard of J.R. Dobbs, also known as Bob? And it kind of leads on from last week as well with the time travel, a little bit at least, because that's how I actually discovered this religion. And it kind of links as well to last week's truth-seeking episode on ARGs, because it was featured heavily in Ong's Hat, which was an ARG, an alternative reality game. So this week, we're discussing the master race. Not a race based on skin colour or where people are born, but what seems to be a race of people that can be of any denomination of people, so long as they're a bit weird, really. So this week, we're looking at the Church of the Subgenius. Now, known as a parody religion, it started in 1979 with stories of its origin set as far back as 1953, though they're pure fabrications that were possibly, and possibly still are, to be fair, peddled, I'm not sure if they're alive or not, peddled by Ivan Stang and Philo Drummond. And, I mean, they're not their real names. I've not just made them up, just to fucking confuse you straight away. They're the names as their pseudonyms. But they'll do. Them names will do for telling you about them, because, what's like a name or a pseudonym between friends, Now, with an exaggerated 50,000 members of the church, this 10,000-ish strong religion is baffling me. It's fucking so confusing. But it's on purpose. It's designed it's completely designed to satirise mainstream religions and cults. And surprisingly, it all started in Texas. Now, I've always imagined that Texas would be a place of very stout religious beliefs, but maybe that's why it started there. Maybe it was against the whole strong religion concept in Texas, unless I've got that completely wrong. But like all the greats, all the great out there pseudo-science, pseudo-history, alternative history, it started out just by handing out pamphlets to the public, which is also where Flat Earth came about, if you didn't know that. Not Flat Earth didn't come from the Church of the Subgenii, but from a guy handing out pamphlets, and he was actually handing out pamphlets apparently because he'd had like fucking 4 or 5 women on the go and about 8 kids between them. He was a university professor in America, and he was struggling for money, so he started selling pamphlets about why the Earth is flat. As far as like Flat Earth law goes, anyway, that's what I remember, because I did an episode of another podcast a couple of years ago, which was, I think, my first dalliance into podcasting and hosting something like that. Like, it was called the Cosmic Closet Podcast. I wanted to get it the right way around. And we did Flat Earth. It was like a Flat Earth talk that took place all around the globe. It was me, an Australian bloke, and a couple of American lads. But it's alright. Go and give that a look. Go and look that up, and then fucking send him a message, send Jacob a message being like, oh, listen to this show. You should have a go on Pause for Thought with Jack. But, because they're not answering me messages. Anyway, the Church of the Subgenius's main beliefs are purposely really difficult to pin down. But it seems like they tell you to turn your back on mainstream capitalism and absolute truths and turn your back to them, but face Bob. And Bob answers all. Like, Bob is everything, but Bob is also nothing. Like, one thing the religion tries to help you with isn't saving your eternal soul from damnation, but instead, it's trying to help you get your end away. So it's unsurprising that a lot of its followers are men, innit? Like, they're all predominantly blokes, apparently. And whether men or women, a lot of the people seem to believe that the church's followers are all social outcasts. Like, they might not all be men, but they're all social outcasts, which is a lot of like cults, to be fair. So it's just as well that the church believes that, and I quote, those who don't fit into society triumph over those who do. Which is pretty true, to be fair, if you think about it. Like, think back to school and that, like, all the fucking weird kids, they've gone on to be happier. Well, supposedly be happier. I don't know if, a lot of people probably say I was a weird kid at school. and everywhere else. But I wouldn't know if I was to be able to say I've gone as far as to be happy. But like, I'm not stuck in a job that I don't like, innit? Like that's what I think they mean. That's what I've taken from that. But this church, it fucking says a lot of things, and we'll go over some of it later on in the show. Anyway, let's have a song, because I've not been putting that many songs in the show for the past couple of weeks. So we'll have a bit different to normal. Bit of R.E.M., Losing My Religion. Thought it might fit, be a bit hacky, make the songs fit the topic. Yeah. If you're listening to this and you think to yourself, oh, quite like this, maybe you'd like to see what I make out of Dead Rats as well, mate. There's a link below in the description. Wherever you're listening to this, you should find a link anyway, a link tree. If not, just search World Around You, the name of the podcast, and you'll find all me on all my socials and that, mate. Give a little go with Threshold.fm as well. You'll find loads of different radio shows there by loads of different people. Anyway, thanks for listening, man. I'll let you get back to your show. Right, so it seems like sex isn't the be-all and end-all, like fucking slipping one up whoever the other members is. That's not the main goal. There is a greater goal within the religion. Like, the big dream of all of Bob's followers is to achieve what they call slack. Now, that's slack with a capital S. They're very, very persistent on the fact that slack should be spelt with a capital S, which is almost plays into the part of the ongoing joke of the whole thing. But slack itself is described by one minister as magical, and by another as ineffable, though two of the best ways to gain slack is through sex and avoiding work. They say it's perfectly acceptable to not work and live off the government rather than to work, though weirdly they also seem to believe that slack is also a great way to not work and to also get more sex. So it's like a weird, like when again, to reference school, when you do like soccer toa, tan, cos and sine, and you got to draw those triangles with 3 letters in, and you cover up one letter and you can get the other 2. You can work out that one by using the other 2. That seems to be what they believe. It's like, I guess it's like a trifecta, innit? It's like a holy trinity of sex, not working, and slack. Anyway, it's all seems to be one of the many purposeful contradictions of the Church of the Subgenius. Now, as I said, they also want you to turn your back on commercialism, but they do openly admit that they just want to earn money and take your money off you. So you should also buy their merchandise, which is just pretty much Bob's face on shirts, pillows, journals, clocks, stickers, transferable tattoos, bumper stickers. Apparently they've got thousands of different types of bumper stickers, which I don't think is really a big thing in England. I don't think that's really something that took off here. But obviously the religious fanatics of the Church of the Subgenius must love a bumper sticker. And it just looks like the sort of Redbubble account where you can buy, like mine, like fucking the World Around You merch, or fucking looks like the Redbubble where you can buy the Truth Seeking merch from, it just looks like one of them. I'd say poorly edited, poorly formatted, I would say, but I think that's kind of on purpose as well, to make the website look a bit more cultish and a bit more dated. And it is quite a dated website in a sense, because it's been knocking about for quite a while. But his face. I'll describe his face to you. So if you imagine, I don't know if you've ever played We Happy Few on PlayStation or Xbox or out, but there's a character in that which I think was called Jack, and it kind of looks like him. If you imagine like your general 1950s TV character personality, so they've got dark hair, the white, if that matters to anyone. Short hair, kind of like the average haircut that people have now, where the sort of person who's, you look at them and you're like, right, you don't think your own thoughts, innit? Like them kind of people where it's a little bit of hair, sort of like a short back and sides kind of thing, but the top bit looks like a small ice gem kind of thing. People that, that sort of haircut-ish, they look like that, and he's in a suit and that, and he's got a pipe on the go. I think he's smiling as well. It's just like a generic looking bloke, really. So I'll tell you a bit more about Bob. His birth name is J.R. Dobbs, although Dobbs was never birthed at all. Like, not to say he was hatched out of an egg or out. He obviously didn't exist. But when he did exist, he was a travelling salesman. which again is a job I've always wanted. Because I mean, I gave it a go, but they only let me work around like fucking a small part of Devon because the company refused to work any further than that, which seemed silly. And I was selling stuff that no one wanted, like they were sending me to fucking new build council estates and being like, yeah, try and sell them some doors and windows. And you'd be like, well, the council houses, the fucking the corpo houses, they don't own the homes. You can see they don't own the homes because that's the place, that's the area. Like I'd look into the places before I'd go to have an idea what to push there, and it was almost like the people in charge didn't really care or think. Almost like the business wasn't circling around or centered around selling doors and windows at all, which is partly the other reason why I left. But anyway, they didn't want the doors and windows. But I've always thought like a good salesman job. Like there's a fucking, I think everyone's favourite salesman is probably fucking Jim Jones, because he used to sell spider monkeys door to door, and I've always thought that'd be a fun job, trying to flog a monkey door to door, which I'm sure I've said before. It's one of my favourite facts, like go-to facts. And we might do we'll definitely do an episode on Jim Jones at some point. Maybe not soon, but in a few weeks' time, a few months' time. Well, we got a rare moment here. We got a little sponsor. I don't often get sponsors. Obviously, Threshold don't see any of the money from my sponsors. Anyway, they give me a little bit of an audio, and I've got a little bit of a thing to read. So here we go. The Diddlesticks. Masturbatory aids for a man in your life with a dissociative identity disorder. It's time for them to pull themselves together. But I've always wanted to go around America as a British travelling salesman, because I think people would fucking love that when you turn up at the door and you're talking like in my voice. They'd be like, oh, where are you from? And I could be selling like fucking World Around You branded knives. It's on brand, because as a taxidermist I use them every day. And it also plays to the stereotype of the English in the eyes of the Americans, that were, suave, sophisticated. We all carry knives. I mean, it doesn't have to be knives, but I just think it'd be fun and possibly easier to convince someone to buy a knife if you've got the knife with you at the door, rather than being like, oh, do you want to buy a knife? One weird way that you can get knives, I remember when I was in Japan, I think it was a certain brand of whiskey, quite a nice whiskey, quite a cheap whiskey as well, it worked out at something like the equivalent of about £9, £10 for a decent sized bottle. And in a certain shop there, if you bought enough of these bottles of whiskey in a certain amount of time, each time you get a little sticker for a chef knife. And if you collected all of the stickers, you could go in there and swap these stickers for a knife, which we would never have in England. That's a promotion that would never take place in England. And I don't understand why it took place there, because the Japanese can drink like fish. But they don't really, from what I saw, they don't really seem to get angry when they're drunk like over here. But like, I'm not saying when Japanese people are in England and they get drunk, they get angry. I mean, like, English people, when they drink, they tend to fight and not in it scrap. But yeah, they're over there. They're just like, oh, look at this. You've bought a load of them bottles of whiskey within a couple of weeks. Here's a knife. This is what you need. I don't know if it's to try and help them start a career, or in like chefing or something. But it just seemed like a weird strategy, a weird marketing strategy. But look at me, the other side of the world, talking about their brand of whiskey. Can't remember the whiskey, but I'm sure if you Google it, fucking Japanese whiskey that comes with a free knife, you might find something. I mean, there's a possibility that I completely misunderstood what the promotion was about, and maybe it was just a sticker with a picture of a knife on it. I mean, I was getting through a lot of whiskey at the time, so I may have just been drunk and made it up. Now I believe it, but I'm pretty sure that you could get a free knife with X amount of bottles of whiskey. But getting back to me travelling salesman, I think that's one of the, apart from what I do now, obviously I really enjoy the taxidermy and the writing books and the doing these shows and that, like, it's fun, a lot of fun. But one of the best jobs I've had, like, because it was summertime, I was outside, I was talking to strangers. You just repeat yourself at these strangers all day as well, like a maniac does, and you get paid for it, which is nice as well. I mean, I wouldn't say it's my best job when I've worked for someone else. That was probably working in the butchers. I mean, that was probably the best that I've had. But apart from like the taxidermy and that, because that's mine, and I've built that up. But the travelling sales with the door-to-door salesman was a lot of fun. It was fun because it's a challenge, innit? Like, if you go to someone who's like doing their house, or like they're just having a house renovation, and well, even if they're not having a house renovation, or going to a new build estate rather than a council estate, going to a new build estate and being like, oh, do you want to? I can see your house looks pretty good. It looks really new and that, but are you not sick of it looking like everyone else's? Do you not want it to stand out? Do you not want everyone to look at your house and be like, oh, they've got a different coloured door now. Oh, they've got blue guttering rather than white guttering, or black guttering rather than green. And saying stuff like that to them, and they just look at you as if you're fucking mental. Anyway, we get back to Bob and his stories. One thing Bob may have been selling when he was travelling salesman, according to his followers anyway, or the perpetuators, the pushers of his religion. It was trying to sell stuff to stop people from going mental. Fluoride, and he was a travelling fluoride salesman. He was either that or he was a drilling equipment salesman. So I'm guessing he must have done the drill equipment with like a pamphlet, and that might be where he, in the lore of this religion, where he picked up the idea of using pamphlets, because I can't imagine he'd be dragging around fucking huge drill bits. But I don't know what type of drilling equipment it was. It could have just been like handheld power drills or hand-powered crank drills. I don't know. I'm thinking like mining equipment for some reason. Now, I can't help but wonder if this plays into the idea of the overall big conspiracy that the church's followers believe in, which we'll get into later on. But in modern times, 50 or so years after the origin of the church, many people believe that there is fluoride in the water now to rot our pineal glands, with the bit in your brain that helps you to dream and fucking supposedly have psychic powers. And by doing that, they're then taking away our psychic abilities, whilst other mentalists think that by drilling oil out of the ground, that it's somehow going to rot away the earth, whilst they all seem, these weird environmentalists, they all seem to forget that the very scientists that tell them that this is going to happen from doing oil, they also say that magic doesn't exist, and that something can't just fucking disappear. So are we supposed to believe that oil comes from the earth and mostly stays on earth, either in gaseous form or liquid form, and then it's gone forever? Because surely, realistically, all we'd need to do is just apply the scientists' science to it, and if we cool the earth down by a good few degrees, we'll be able to bring all those gases back into liquid form, and they can run down the dome that covers the earth, and then collect back into the ground, ready to be reused. Maybe that's the whole point of these fucking environmental scientists, trying to get us to cool the earth down. Oh, it's getting too hot, all the oil's staying in gas form. If we can cool it down, like when you cool down a bathroom after you've had a shower and the water starts dripping down the walls. That's all they want to do. That's the only reason why they want to cool the earth down, innit? It's got to be. It's the only thing that makes sense. Like I grew up in Manchester. It's cold and raining all the time, innit? People want it to be warmer. They don't want it to be colder. It's the fucking big oil and that want it to be warmer, cooler, so that they can get more oil for free, and they don't have to remove their equipment, because obviously the oil then will just funnel down these holes that are already there, and then they can just suck it all back up out of the ground, innit? But I mean, what do I know? I'm not a scientist, so no one's gonna ever listen to me. But speaking of psychic abilities, though, I mentioned them a minute ago. Bob first used to receive guidance from a relatively evil alien overlord who was a little bit close to being like Xenu, in my opinion. But except he wasn't actually evil, he was only relatively evil, like when he was compared to us. But compared to the elder gods that are also believed to exist by the Church of the Subgenius, he was relatively good. Again, another contradiction there, and it's full of them. Oh, and the he's that I keep saying, when I keep saying he and him here at this point, not about Bob, but about this relatively evil alien overlord. It's like he's with a capital H, because he's a god, alien, and deity that was giving the messages, who was known as Jehovah One. Though it was spelt without the vowels, I think, from memory, so JHVH and then the number 1. Like something like a kid would write on a table, or someone who's terrible at countdown. Anyway, Jehovah was known to be one of the rebel gods. Now, I don't know anything else about these rebel gods. I couldn't find much else on it. They're also said to believe in gods, aliens, and mutants. Now, the mutants Couldn't find much on. Couldn't find anything else really on the gods. Couldn't find a hell of a lot of stuff about aliens on it. So we might have a part 2 to this at another time where I've been able to find this other stuff out, but I couldn't find it. And as I say, Jehovah was one of these rebel gods amongst these the so-called group of gods, which are called elder gods, even though they're all aliens. So that could possibly be a nod to Satanism, because Satan's said to have been a rebellious angel, and with an angel being God's good servants, yet Satan was a bad good one, or a good bad one, however grammatically that would work. And this is what I mean when I keep saying there's purposeful contradictions. Like Jehovah 1 and the other elder gods are led by a boss god, if you like, called Yog-Sothoth, which sounds very Tolkien, but it's actually just a character that the organisers of the religion plucked away from H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu lore. So some of you might recognise that name. I might be butchering the name, you know. A lot like many of the characters as well in this super fucking confusing shit show of a religion. A lot of the characters are borrowed from other works of fiction, be it either like sci-fi, religious texts, and that's kind of the point of the whole thing. You need to look at Bob less of a god and more of a prophet of sorts, rather than a god himself. Though in reality, Bob is nothing, both literally and figuratively. Like, he's just a thing to aim your praise and disdain towards, in the same way that like a Catholic will thank Jesus for good things but blame the devil for bad things. With Bob, you can blame Bob for the bad things, but be happy with Bob for the good things. But really, you're just talking to yourself in a room, like when you pray. Except the Church of the Subgeniuses openly discourages praising and blaming like that for a mythical deity, you know. They want you yourself to be accountable for your actions, whether good or bad. They want you to praise yourself for hard work, and also realise that problems in your life probably stem from a decision you've made somewhere down the line. And if they didn't directly stem from a decision that you made, then they just want you to look at how you handled the situation, or try and find a way to better handle that situation in the future, or to even help someone going through that situation in the future and figure out a way to help them. Like, it seems like a good lesson, to be honest. It seems very self-reflective, which goes against what a lot of religion seems to be about, from my understanding of it, especially of Christianity. They want you to be self-reflective to a point, but if you start blaming yourself and thinking it's yourself, they go, no, it's not you, it's God. And then you sort of lose power. This isn't about really taking power away from you. It's literally just about taking away $1 from you. That's all they want. They want $1, and if you want to be a minister, I think... Oh, fuck, it's on another page of my notes. I think it was $35, $30 to become a minister, which I'm tempted by, you know. Anyway, it's the whole religion itself is just generally reflective, which it's a good thing, innit, man? That's a good thing to do. That's the only way that a person's ever really going to grow or change. Because if you just keep blaming the devil for your alcoholism, for example, then you aren't going to try and help yourself, because you've already done all the mental gymnastics needed to convince yourself that a mythical deity is responsible for the ergonomic design of the average bottle opener, when really it's just you that keeps opening the bottles. It doesn't actually mention booze on the websites that are out like that, or drugs, I don't think, but it's just an example to try and help you understand how I'm seeing this, you know. But given what I've taken from the website, and which is a fucking hell of a website, and you should have a look at it, and other readings that I've done around it from other people's analyses of it and that, and trying to put together what I think of it, it seems like it was just made up. So if I was to just make stuff up about it all, then I think I'd be admired by the members and leaders of the Church of the Subgenius, because that kind of seems to be the point of it. Anyway, Jehovah 1 has got a missus, though. He's married and that, you know. And I can't remember much about her other than that her name is Eris, E-R-I-S. It could be Iris. It looks like Erin, but with an S, so Eris. But Bob's got a wife and all, and she was called Constance. And the pair of them, Bob and Constance, they had their own separate law built around them that tells the followers that Constance and Bob are archetypal gender roles, if you like, for their religion, for their beliefs. which a lot of analysts, people that have looked into the religion kind of compare it to the Hindu doctrine of, I want to say, I've just wrote down S and P. I think it's Shiva and Parvati. I might be wrong. I probably am wrong. Anyway, the idea that men should be like Bob, and women should be like Constance. But in all honesty, I'm not really sure what Constance did or didn't do. I didn't look into it. It didn't flash up as important, and that's not like a misogynistic thing. That I don't care. Oh, I don't care what a woman does. She didn't exist. Like Mrs. Claus, Mrs. Claus doesn't exist. People are only interested in her when she's in her underwear. So at least we're not thinking about Constance in her underwear like fucking Mr. J. Medeiros, that fucking, I played you the song a few weeks ago. Anyway, very off topic there. The telepathic messages that Jehovah One would send straight into Mr. Dobbs's brain, straight into Bob's head. It's now a common phrase amongst subgenii, that's what the plural is, by the way, is they say that their skulls are bigger on the inside than the outside, which obviously helps with receiving telepathic messages, I believe. Now, the first messages that Bob received were whilst he was building a TV or whilst watching late night TV. There's conflating stories, again, contradictions. The first messages, though, I might actually have that wrong. I'm not sure. No, it was. I'm pretty sure it was Bob. I'm unsure if I did read something where I think it was one of the founders of the religion, Drummond. I think it was Philo Drummond who received telepathic messages from Bob himself. But I think it was Bob receiving the telepathic messages from Jehovah One. And he also received mystical powers from Jehovah One, along with supernatural knowledge of the past and the future, and a form of unfathomable power, which I only imagine is probably explained in great detail over lots of bite-sized chunks so that you can easily understand it, if I've grasped any of this religion at all. Now, around about a year after receiving his first telepathic messages from Bob, around about a year after Bob receiving his telepathic messages from Jehovah One. See, I'm getting confused now because everything you say, there's also an opposite for it. But we're trying to stick to make this into like a story, The first year after, which would be about 8 years before Bob was quoted as saying, one of his big quotes is, "You'll pay to know what you really think," which is a good slogan, isn't it, for a religion, You don't have many slogans in a religion. Like, you might have Amen, which isn't really a slogan. Like, you could put on a t-shirt, I guess, it makes a statement. But having a picture of Bob's face with a pipe going, "You'll pay to know what you really think," that's pretty, that's a good little phrase, isn't it? Now, I was meaning to tell you about Bob's directive from the rebel god himself. J1 wanted Bob to lead a worldwide conspiracy and to brainwash individuals in order to make them work for a living. But Bob, ever the saviour, decided to refuse these orders, and that's when he founded the Church of the Subgenius. So he received these powers from Jehovah One, and then didn't use them. He used them against Jehovah One and the other gods. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering why this obviously powerful deity would seek out the person. If these deities were made to believe are all knowing and that, innit, all powerful, so why would they purposely seek out someone who wouldn't be scared into doing Jehovah One's bidding? And I reckon, it's because the rebel god's rebellious nature. He wanted someone to rebel against him. So was Bob just being played for a fool? Like, did he know that Bob would do this? Bob was the smartest choice in all known men of the planet Earth, in my opinion. He just wouldn't stay dead. He's a man that has been killed and died and been reborn countless times. Because of this, Jehovah One knew that Bob was just a so-called world avatar. He's not a real person, but in reality, the realest person knocking about in the 1950s. Whilst growing up, Bob Dobbs was said to be pretty intelligent, kind of similar to Al Bailick from last week, if you listen to last week's show on time travel, I guess, but instead of just claiming to be intelligent, Bob was able to prove it. He'd spent years studying the Rosicrucians, the Fourth Way, Sufism, amongst lots of other religious orders. He also travelled to Tibet for a couple of years, which is where he learned all about Yetis, which, according to the church, humankind's, specifically the race of the subgeniuses, their ancestors. Now that's where the race part comes into it. There's also no real way of finding out if someone is of subgenius ancestry unless they join the church, where they then become a member of the Church of the Subgenius, meaning that they were an ancestor of a Yeti all along. Otherwise, why would they have joined at all if they weren't a member of the subgenius ancestry? They wouldn't just join if they weren't descended from a Yeti. It wouldn't make sense for them to just join. Though I said Bob was intelligent, and it's not something that is really... It's not really factored into his character as such. It's there, like he was clearly a very smart man. There's no denying that Bob were clever, but Bob was said to be lucky, which is seen as more important in this religion than intelligence. Bob was the human, or not the human, but Bob was the world avatar embodiment of Slack with a capital S, as he was able to effortlessly achieve his goals, which is the main thing of the religion. If you have Slack, you'll be able to effortlessly achieve all your goals without trying. Like he never tried, he never did, but he did and tried everything. Which sounds like a more powerful sentence in my head than what it probably sounds to use. That sounded really poignant, that, when I was thinking about it then as I was about to say it. Anyway, this sort of weird conflation of intelligence and luck isn't the only thing that ties him to Al Bailick, though, because Bob was also a time traveller, and it's this ability to time travel that causes the changes in doctrine within the faith. So Bob's travelled back and been somewhere else, and then left a record of it, meaning that he can be found throughout history, kind of thing, And it can also be found about a much later date, because maybe they looked in books in the 90s and there was no record of him, being there in that town or whatever. But then when you read that book in 2015, suddenly there's a record of him there. Now, this is known to the subgenii as the sacred doctrine of erasability. And in order to honour Bob and his life, a promise is made to the church by its followers, and they purposely avoid making plans, or at least purposely avoid making long-term plans. Like, for simple things like, we'll go to the cinema on next week on Wednesday, obviously after 1 o'clock, because we want to Wear the World Around You's show live on Threshold FM. They'd never do that. I mean, I don't know if they'd even listen to this show, innit, because that's like a regular thing, and does that class as a long-term plan if you plan to listen or watch to something regularly. But they reference a lot of fucking popular culture and science fiction TV shows and films and things like that, so maybe they do, maybe that's where they draw the line. They're like, right, we'll watch Doctor Who every week, but we're not going to arrange to go bowling 2 weeks on Tuesday because it's just ineffable, which seems to be a word that they throw around a lot, which I don't actually know what it means. I haven't actually got a clue what ineffable means. Ineffable as a word is actually in my first book, Uneducated Guesses, and I've always thought it meant when, obviously this proves it wrong the way they're using it in context there, but I still don't know what it means, and I refuse to look it up because I think it ruins the magic of the book, But I've always thought ineffable is when, like when you've got kids with you, like little kids, and someone fucking cuts you off in a shop with a shopping trolley or something, and you want to call them a cunt, you fucking cunt, but you can't because you've got little Mindy with you. You go, you fudging country tractor. I've always thought it was that. I thought it was the word for that. I know there's a word for doing that. Something like, I think it's actually a phrase like mincing cues or something, mincing peas. But even that could be wrong. I might have misheard that. I remember hearing on a TV show, David Mitchell's wife, the blonde lady who's really good at poker. Can't remember her name. Because I wasn't trying to think about that at the time, but I remember she says it on the programme. I thought it was mincing peas or mincing cues. Like peas and cues, but mincing them. I don't know. I thought that's what it was. Hey, they seem to have a general rule, like not like a rule set in stone. Like they do have instructions, which I didn't actually make a note of because I didn't actually find them on the website, so I don't know if that's just something someone's made up for their Wikipedia entry. And this rule is one I've made up, but it's worded in a way. I've condensed how they word it basically. So it's important for the church's followers to just leave people be, like just leave them alone, which as someone who grew up Catholic, like, that's hard to get your head around, because you're constantly taught to dob yourself in it, to grass yourself up on yourself once a week to a priest, which makes it seem normal for other people to dob people in, but Bob Dobbs will never dob anyone in. No, he's not a dobber inner. One way followers are said to view the world as it's like the earth, as a people, or as a thing, as a concept. Another little concept they throw around, like just leave people be, is that the world is a turkey, and Bob gives you the knife to carve it up, which is a nice phrase in a way. I think it's a nice phrase, because they're kind of telling you to stab at the world, innit? Like, just take a stab at it. I think that's what they mean. I think they mean just, just fucking give it a go, take a stab at it. But Bob is whatever you want Bob to be. He's here if you need him. He's there if you need him there. He's a crutch if you need him. He's an enemy if you need one. He's a brother, a father, a friend. He doesn't exist, though. And they're very open about him not being real, because none of it's real. One thing that Bob says is definitely real, though, is the UFOs, and we can take his word on that, guys. Though the UFOs are not filled up with sightseeing aliens. Most of them are government officials spying on the populace of the world. Only a few of the UFOs actually have aliens inside of them. Other truths of Bob, though, they seem to revolve around this the idea of a great conspiracy, which are now referred to. The believers of the church and of this great conspiracy, the people of nowadays, we would refer to them as sheeple, maybe. But Bob, the travelling drill equipment salesman, told Philo, Ivan, and of course Dr. X, who was only there at the start of this religion, but I forgot to mention him earlier on. He didn't seem massively important. He wasn't mentioned a lot, which means he's probably more important than anyone else, because he's just like, keep my fucking name out of it. He's probably the member of the CIA or FBI that was involved with this. Anyway, it's purely speculation. These people who were unaware of the Great Conspiracy and the Great Conspiracy's brainwashing, the church calls them pinks. Now, I sat for a while and I tried to I was trying to figure out why you would call them pinks. And all I can come up with is that in Bob's eyes, these people were sick because they'd been brainwashed. And collectively, if one's sick and they're all sick, you could argue that they're all together collectively. They're six. Like sick with an S at the end, which sounds a lot like six, which in snooker is a pink ball. So it seems a bit convoluted though, that, and I'm not sure how much influence snooker had over 1950s America when Bob was starting his religion that started in 1979 or 1970 odd. Now, if Bob had listened to Jehovah 1, then he would be trying to indoctrinate people into the Great Conspiracy and trying to make people want to earn money, and that means that he'd be denying them slack and turning many away from slack. And Bob wasn't trying to indoctrinate the masses into a presiding Great Conspiracy. Instead, he was trying to expose the Great Conspiracy by teaching people the conspiracy of the Great Conspiracy, but he could only teach people about it that already the only people that already knew about it, before Bob had told him. So as I said, Bob is what you want him to be, and for a lot of these disenfranchised blokes, he was a spiritual leader that didn't exist. They'd hold religious sermons as well, which I think were called dissermons, or something like that, and they were basically, from what I've read about them, just like a pop-up comedy club, which I think's a fucking good idea. Like, you just go up and fucking rant about stuff, people have a laugh, and then you move on. Like, these sermons, though, what's interesting about these is that apparently they claim that these sermons have taken place all around the world, from America as far as China, which is mental when you think about it, because you wouldn't reckon that China would be the place to go on the stage and freely rant about your problems on a stage to a bunch of people that weren't actually even Chinese. But maybe that's all a part of the Great Conspiracy, that we all believe that China isn't as free as the rest of us, when in reality we're as free as we view China to be. Maybe. Anyway, let's have another song. Again, a bit different to what I'd normally play. This is Decision, and it's off of Busta Rhymes' album Back on My BS from 2009. There's a lot of people on it. See if you can guess them all in the Discord. some of what I've read is hard to put into words that aren't directly just a quote from the website. And this week I am just going to have a couple direct quotes because it's difficult to reword it because you don't fully understand what you're reading. And this one I'm going to read to you now is literally just a list. So let me get it up. And it's okay. So this is some of the stuff that the church offers its patrons. Using subgenius secrets of bull dada and more realism, you can now miraculously eliminate. Tell you what I'll do. I'll read it as it's written. So, using subgenius secrets of Boudala and more realism, you can now miraculously eliminate compulsive urges such as smoking, eating, sleeping, working, end baldness, constipation, sex, money problems, arseholeness, and painful shortage of slack, which, I mean, that in itself pretty much covers everything, innit? Like, that's everything people could want when you had and then when you add like fucking sex and good business acumen to the list, it seems like a really good idea to join up. Weirdly, some of the people associated with it have been associated with conspiracy themselves. So you've got Matt Groening, Robert Anton Wilson. They're two names that stand out in the list I found. Like, Wilson and Matt have both taught a lot of people about conspiracies through humour, or at least alluded to them to make people aware of the concept. So who's to say that the church isn't where a lot of the conspiracies themselves stem from, and they overtly say they're spreading conspiracy not as a joke but as a double bluff, knowing that in the same way that trolls will jump on the QAnon bandwagons, that they'll have also jumped on the subgenius wave back then and spread lies and veiled jokes to the world, disseminating the literature and teachings to the world, all whilst thinking they're funny, but actually doing nothing more than what Jehovah 1 wanted Bob to do in the first place. And that seems a genuine concern for some of the people in this fake religion from the offset. People began to take it all very seriously more recently, and I've actually been listening to the teachings, which I guess that's unavoidable because, fucking idiots are everywhere. But I guess it's also really easy to take this as fact if you're feeling disenfranchised and you're looking for a place to belong. And if you are looking for a place to belong, guys, join the Threshold FM Discord, where there's loads of lovely people to talk to, and they're not going to warp your minds and imaginations at all. But I mean, that all makes the church seem a little bit culty, even though it's very much anti-cult in its sentiments, because you're not really a part of anything unless you want to be, unless you believe you're a part of something. In many cases, all that's happened is you've just lost a couple of dollars and been sent a bunch of paper in the post. Unless you want to be a minister, in which case, like I said at the start, that costs like $30. It is $30. It costs $30, and you fucking throw that at them through the internet or whatever, or in the post, and then you become a minister of the religion. Which, being honest now, that might be how I may invest some of my Patreon subscriber money. I haven't quite decided yet, but I love the idea of me holding sermons for the Church of the Subgenius and just fucking ranting at people. Like, imagine if I just every week, like once a week, or once a month, or even once every 6 months, rent out a local church hall, put posters and flyers everywhere for the Church of the Subgenius, and then just see how many fucking of these episodes I can recite to strangers in a church, and then just walk out the building. Don't speak to anyone, nothing. Have someone in the corner selling World Around You merch and giving out fucking leaflets for the taxidermy and for Threshold FM and stuff like that. But then I just leave, and people are like, "Oh my god, that was incredible." And I really would like to do that. And I actually wonder, is that something that we could do at Threshold FM as Threshold FM, as Lobsters? Could we go and do something like that? But I just think it'd be fun, and asking for donations and being very open. Because as long as we're very open, like, oh, we want your donations, it's because we want money, and just end it there because we want money. Like, that's why we're doing it. Because the church itself seems to have always been very transparent with what they want the money for. They want your money so that they can have slack, so that they don't have to work. Unlike the well-paid priests of today that want your money for a new roof, or the priests that want your money to help the poor, but instead they don't give that money to the poor, guys. What we do, as we've learned in earlier episodes, they box these pennies up with the negative energy that they've harvested from the subjects, and they send it forward to the bishop, who counts all of the priest's kickback, takes his cut, has a sniff of the negative energy, and passes it up the ladder until it reaches the Pope. The Pope then takes his bags of fucking cathode donations and throws them into a swimming pool, which he dives into for his own sick pleasure. But also, he does that so that the Pope can then pass on his own negative emotions of physical pain onto the mystical deity we all secretly worship, that harvests our negative emotions from this well-structured, secretive religious racket. And segueing painfully from cartoon characters like Scrooge McDuck to Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh could get me to be able to say what I want to say next, which I haven't really accounted for, and I'm struggling and talking shit. The Church of the Subgenius believe in something called excremeditation, which is a focus on pooing and the power of pooing. And in all honesty, I've distracted myself by trying to segue that in. I've just wrote down the words excremeditation, and I can't actually remember what they believe about it, but it's definitely worth a Google. Tell you what, we'll have another direct quote from their website, and I'll read it as it's written. So give me a second. Just need a little breath. As I just said then, big boy breath. See another dimension on your TV. Bob's promise is to widen the scope of nature and abnormal behaviour and explore new ways of going over the edge and coming back. Plus, to bring back those who couldn't on their own. To help you create the highest possible earnings from the psychodynamics of abnormality. To turn conspiracy-implanted personality disorders around and channel them into your illusion of creativity that will fool normals and get you sex. As you learn more and more reliable, safe methods of time control, you will find your IQ increasing. Your very cranium will seem to pulsate from within, barely able to contain the turmoil of glorious new concepts and mental skills. Soon, you'll be able to withstand communication with the exists, our mentors in space. You will be ready for transfiguration into a new physical body, a more powerful one, built to contain the surging mental and material mutations that your brain now generates. Yes! Becoming an overhuman, a dangerous and feared superhuman of the future. Yet, because your subgenius roots can never be forgotten, you won't be able to abuse your powers, but instead make them an unstoppable force for good and justice, choosing always to defend the oppressed subgenius wherever they may be. The world is a turkey, and Bob gives you the carving knife. Fear the stark fist of removal no longer. Become physically attractive overnight. Attain status, luck, prosperity by blowing them off. When you join this Order of the Knights of Wotan, you get a mastery of fighting skills, good health, an attractive personality, and a weird ability to influence others, to bend them to your will. You'll learn incantations that lead to mastery over fiscal planes, the occult technology of finance, power, easy ways to borrow money from other people who don't have it either. Achieve sheer gut blowout. Our ascetism consists solely of the abstinence from abstinence. Give up the not giving in to temptation. Think thoughts that no human has ever dared think before. You can learn to recall memories from the past that you had forgotten, or that never existed at all. Contact aliens, both benevolent and evil. The Church of the Subgenius, the first and last stand against a crumbling world filled with pinks and glorps. Survive the great cataclysms through UFO transport. So that's the whole website is written like this. Obviously, where I'm going, survive the great cataclysms through UFO transport. That's all in capital letters. Like, there's parts of it where every other word's in capital letters. Like when you're reading it, the little voice in your head that reads to you sounds like you might be having a stroke. Yeah, I fully recommend going on the website, man. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, from just that little bit that I've read there, you can see how a lot of conspiracy lore gets interwoven into this, and it's got a little something for everybody. It's a brilliant website, and I'm gonna, like I've said, I'll have all the links for it on the World Around You Discord, which is pretty much all that Discord gets used for. It's just sources are now getting pumped into one of the channels on there. I don't really do much else with it. I would really like to have a go at starting my own religion, but I'm not sure how to go about it. A religion in the sense that this is a religion, the Church of the Subgenius, because I'd be worried that people would think I just copied them, though. But ask anyone that knows me. I've always thought, and I've been told many times as well, that I'd make a good cult leader. So what better way to scratch that itch than to make a fake one? I mean, it's something for me to look into anyway, if the taxidermy and these radio shows and my books fall apart and people aren't interested in any of this. But then again, I suppose it might be easier if these things go well. I can build on these. Looks like, from going off all this, all I'd need really is an imagination and a P.O. box somewhere nowhere near my house to go and collect my bags of pound coins from. And I'm thinking, if you send an empty prepaid stamped envelope inside another envelope with £3 inside it, I could send you I don't know, like a transfer tattoo of some kitchen appliances and a pamphlet, which will be just full of ramblings, mate. I fucking love that, and we can just see where this goes. Anyway, let's get serious for a minute. It's time for this week's Here's How. Honest, I think it's probably about the end of the show, guys. So I'm the world around you, and this was Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. Now, later today, we got HDR, he's on at 5, Jimmy's on at 7. I'll be back tomorrow night as well with Jimmy for Truth Seeking. You can find all the past episodes of that on the Threshold.fm app. And seeing as I've got a few seconds left there, I think me books are now available as ebooks on Amazon, £2.50 each, so you can get all 3 for less than a tenner. And don't be thinking, he's a greedy cunt, he wants me to buy 3 of them. Don't be thinking that you're really lining my pockets though. I get about £1 from each sale, so I get £1 from each sale, whether it's the ebook or the actual book. I'm just happy to know that people are giving them a go. This is how I've been passing my time over lockdown, writing this fucking thing. So anyway, I'll see you in a bit, guys.